Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. We want to welcome our friends in South Africa, the United States, and around the world to this week's edition of A Conversation with El-Hajj Mauri Saalakhan. I am pleased to be your host, coming to you once again through the Salam Media platform out of Johannesburg, South Africa. Salam Media is an online portal for humanitarian journalism. We don't just report the news, we advise you on what you can do about it. Last week, the focus of our broadcast was the Palestinians' Holocaust. This week's related topic is titled The Message of Neturei Karta International. Our special guest for today's conversation is a good friend, Rabbi Israel Dovid Weiss. Now, before we introduce Rabbi Weiss, I would like for us to see and hear a little introductory video and audio on today's hot topic. What we're going to share is the following clips. The Middle East Monitor reel of the demolition of a Palestinian family's home, a home that also provided protective shelter for a special needs wheelchair dependent child. Then there is a Middle East Eye clip of Zionists sealing, listen good, sealing Palestinian wells and springs on agricultural lands with concrete. There's an audio message from a Palestinian American friend and brother of mine, Dr. Imaduddin Ahmed of the Minaret of Freedom Institute, sharing a thought. We'll just hear his voice. And last but certainly not least, we have a clip of Rabbi Weiss in the public square responding to some questions. So we're going to hear these pieces of video and audio. They're all short, back to back, and then we'll bring on Rabbi Dovid Weiss.
اللي صار احنا هنا هذه ارضنا متوجين عليها وورثة عن جدنا الهميات السنين. ما وجدنا الا الجيش الاحتلالي الاسرائيلي جايب تنظيمه الجيش والجرافات والخلاطات بسكروا عندنا نبعات مي كنا مستفيدين منهن. زارعين ارضنا حوالي 80 ظلم. عندنا هي حمامات بلاستيكيه مزروعه خيار بندوره عده خضره وزراعه خارجيه وتعيين حوالي كميه كبيره من هذه العائلات.
in Israel will have no clue about the nature of the United States. The further reason is that many people in America, including Jews and even evangelicals, can no longer view the facts as living. And so, the complicit American press can no longer continue to speak on legally.
It seemed like the media accused this politician of being anti-Semitic, and now he's trying to prove that he's not anti-Semitic by saying how great Israel is. Does that surprise you?
It doesn't surprise me because, like I said, this is the general perception that's given very successfully done by the Zionists as a ploy to gaining support and to stifle any opposition to the state of Israel is by equating and convoluting and the two concepts of Judaism and Zionism, even though it's really both contradictory, and it's just so blatantly wrong. Judaism is to serve God, to be peaceful, to be loving, to do kindness. Zionism is a truly selfish political movement of occupying another people. So wrong, so vicious, so anti what Judaism is all about. And it's totally humiliating to us as practicing Jews to see and hear what is being done in our name.
Supporting Israel is not support for Jews! Supporting Israel is not support for Jews!
AIPAC, for instance, and the other Zionist organizations makes it a point of attempting to have every single faction in the United States or around the world, any political group, whether it's Democrats or Republicans or independents, it really doesn't matter. They want to actually equate and convolute the issue of Judaism and the Jewish people and the state of Israel, and try to create a mirage, a concept that if you're opposing the state of Israel, you're anti-Semitic. And in truth, Israel and Zionism, then what they're doing is the greatest exacerbator of anti-Semitism around the world.
Okay, without any further ado, we want to bring on Rabbi Israel Dovid Weiss. I want to welcome him to the platform. In Arabic, Assalamu alaikum. In Hebrew, Shalom alaikum, or Shalom. And welcome to our platform this evening in South Africa, Rabbi Weiss.
Yes, alaikum salam, and it's an honor and a privilege. Help of the Almighty, it's really humbled to be for such a great audience that you have around the world, South Africa. Personally, I was in South Africa a few times for the Palestinian cause. We were in the Durban at the conference, the United Nations Conference Against Xenophobia, Racism, and we were different times for Palestine. So I had the opportunity to meet with a lot of the activists for Palestine and the Muslim communities over there, in different parts of South Africa, all around South Africa. So it was really, it's a privilege, and of course around the world, which you're broadcasting on your show. So with God's help, inshallah, we should be able to sanctify God's name and we'll bring peace to the world through this interview.
Rabbi Weiss, this is a good place to start. You have been yourself and members of your community, leaders within your community, have been around the world for many, many years, addressing this issue and striving to the best of your ability to bring clarification between, around the distinctions between Judaism and Zionism. Now, for those who are unfamiliar with the mission and message of Neturei Karta International, let's begin there. What is your mission? What is your message?
Again, with the help of the Almighty, I pray to the Almighty that He should bestow upon me His truth, His wisdom, that I may sanctify His name and be a conduit, be a messenger of the Almighty's message. Our main issue is because we believe the Almighty rules the world. This is His world, and we are required to stand up when we find the desecration of God's name. Things are being done, injustice and wrong, and when that is being done in the name of God, in the name of our religion, Judaism, which is to be subservient to God. So we have a special, an extra requirement to stand up and to teach, to clarify, to educate, to let the world hear and understand that what they're being taught, what they're being told, the narrative is a false narrative. And in this case, what we're talking about is Zionism. That is a movement that is the ideology behind the creation of the state of Israel. Now, the state of Israel, as its name, is directly straight out of the Bible, unfortunately, using the name Jacob, Israel. The Zionism is Zion, meaning the city of David. So basically, there is a group of people that stood up and said that they are here to fulfill God's will and to create a state of Israel, that this is the utopia, what is to be, that the end of the 2,000 years of exile, and they're returning and doing God's will to return to the Holy Land, and anything that stands in its way is simply evil that has to be eradicated or removed and so forth. This is very repulsive. It is unacceptable. It's all false, patently false. There could be nothing further from the truth. Judaism, again, is subservience to God. We are here on this world to serve the Almighty. We were told by God 2,000 years ago with the destruction of the temple that we are forbidden to, in any manner, shape, or form, to try to end exile. Maybe I have to go back just a little bit, because to remember, we have the covenant that we made with God as far as Judaism is. Our religion is 3,000 years old, where Moses went on Mount Sinai, took the Torah for God. We made this covenant that we should be subservient. We were sent into the Holy Land, but God stipulated with the Jewish people that we have to be in a very high level of holiness. If not, then the land will reject us as a nation. And that is what happened in around 2,000 years ago. That's around a period of 1,000 years after we took the Torah. And what happened was, so there was the destruction of the temples. There were two temples, King Solomon's temple. Then there was another. After that was destroyed, there was a second one built, and it was destroyed. And then the Jews were dispersed amongst the nations, and we were clearly given the instructions by God that we are not to return, to try to leave this exile until the Almighty one day, with His compassion, will reveal His glory throughout the world. All humanity will recognize that there is one God, and when that will happen, then God, with His compassion, it will be the will of all humanity that we should all serve God. The whole world will serve, not become Jews, but serve God in harmony. At that time, we will go up, and it will be the will of the nations that the Jewish people should be there. Not a state of Israel, not this political state. It will be to serve God and it will be the will of all humanity. Till that day comes, we are expressly forbidden to try to create a Jewish sovereignty. That is very clear. And for 2,000 years, Jews went through a lot of suffering, went through the trials and tribulations, the Inquisition, went through the Crusades, and many, many sufferings. And we never, although we had the opportunity many times to be able to to be able to create a Jewish sovereignty, because sometimes there was rich communities and so for the golden age in Judaism. Yet we never made our own sovereignty. Why? Because we knew that is against the will of God. We are in exile, and exile means that we were banished from the table of God, so to say, as a nation. We have to serve God, and the Jewish people are many very holy people, but we are not to try to attempt to return to God's garden, and it's only the Almighty, without any human intervention, could end this exile. So to say that we're going to create a state is just antithetical to that. There's no such thing. Now, that would just be one issue. But so in other words, if the Zionists would have just come and say, "Oh, we're going to make a state," and all of a sudden these guys come along, we're going to do God's will, we would never accept that. And Jews around the world, as this has been shown, invariably the very religious community around the world does not accept the concept of creating a state. They said there's a rebellion against God. But being that this state was created in a desolate land, in an uninhabited land, but they decided to pick Palestine to create this so-called Jewish sovereignty that they're creating. They decided to go to Palestine. Mind you, we're not talking, the whole Zionist movement was not a religious movement. It was simply nationalists who wanted to create a state using the name of Judaism just to give it the legitimacy. But if they were actually thinking of going to Uganda, to Patagonia, to some lush lands where it would be productive and they'd be able to have a state that would be something they'll be able to create a beautiful nationalist home. But they decided for practical reasons that they're going to go to Palestine. And because Palestine, it was actually very far from productive as far as, what they're looking for, this utopia that they wanted to make. But they understood that in order to be able to get backing from the world, from Jews, and mostly they knew they wouldn't get it from the religious Jews, but some rich Jews who don't know their religion, and to get from the Christian society. A lot of them believe in the concept of the children of Israel should be in Israel. They understood they have to use, in order to get a narrative to be able to support a creation of a nationhood, they should go to Palestine, because that would fit very well into the puzzle, into this, the fabric of what they need support. So they decided to go to Palestine, and Palestine was inhabited. The majority was Muslim. And then the second community was Christian, and the small community was Jewish. And they decided they're going to make their home there, ignoring the fact that this whole community, and especially the Muslim community, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people that were, I gather from what the numbers were, I think around close to 1 million. The numbers of people that were living there, they were living there for generations. They had their homes, their communities, their towns, their villages, their cities, and they just ignored that. And it was a time before the mainstream, before all the different media outlets, before internet and all these things. So they had there was only like a few television, barely a few ways of broadcasting. So the world didn't know what is doing in the Middle East, what is doing in Palestine, what is doing in the Arab countries. So they went along and they just told everybody, oh, it's a land without a people for a people without a land. So they decided to create their state. And there was obviously the inhabitants stood in opposition to this, both the Muslim, Christian, and the Jewish community. They stood up and said, whoa, what are you doing here? You're killing, you're stealing, and they're coming in the name of Judaism. The Torah says you're not allowed to kill, you're not allowed to steal. Whatever they're doing is a terrible crime, what they would call the Nakba, a colossal crime. But when Zionism created their state, they breached the laws of the Torah in every facet, creating a Jewish state, regardless if it would be inhabited or not, creating a Jewish state in the land that was inhabited by a people. The crime is beyond words. You're taking a whole land of people and making them as if they don't exist, and they could do with them what they please, throw them out and kill and arrest and do what they want with the people that are staying there. So therefore, we as Jews found upon ourselves the responsibility to stand up and say that what they're doing is a fraud, a crime. It's not in the name of my religion. It's not, it's unacceptable. And we plead with the world leaders to understand that they're not supporting Judaism. They're not supporting people who are the practitioners of Judaism if they're supporting the state. We went through the Holocaust. We went through terrible injustice and so forth, and people have pity on what happened to us, but that does not justify to take a land, a people, and to just brush, take a broom and brush them away as if it's not theirs and they have no right to this. It's impossible. This cannot be done. It's unacceptable, and that is what our job is.
Now, Rabbi Weiss, we have a limited amount of time, and I have a number of questions for you. So I'm going to ask you to be as concise in your responses as you can so that we can get all of these in, hopefully, prayerfully. You mentioned the fact that when this formerly called experiment, I don't know if it was experiment development, this colonial enterprise began back before 1948. I mean, the seeds of it, actually were sown in the latter part of the of the 19th century. You said that the religious Jews were animately opposed to it. Today, what we see in occupied Palestine is an unfortunate appearance of unanimity among religious Jews and non-religious Jews, secular Jews. I mean, is this an accurate view? And if so, why? Why has there been this coming together, this unanimity among religious and secular Jews in occupied Palestine today?
With the help of the Almighty, it's not an unity of Jews, because in the very religious communities, and it's confusing. It's clear that it is confusing, but in the very religious communities from day one till today, around the world, you will find that the more the religious, the more anti-Zionist, because as I say, it's just totally antithetical, is totally contradictory to our religion. So that you will find the largest communities in Jerusalem, maybe the second largest community is in New York, right? Let's say the largest concentration of religious Jews you will find in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and you've been there many times.
Yes,
you see that there's not one single Israeli flag there. The very religious are anti in every facet, every form, shape, and form the state of Israel. But Zionism was able, with their proficiency, with their to be able to create an image, a mirage, a certain a narrative, to that it is they call it a Jewish state, and they incorporated the concepts of Judaism. They were able to get communities through first of all, they were able to get, being that they were given the rights of creating the state through the United Nations, so they were given control over the land. When they were given control over the land, so there were two factions of Jews who joined them. There was Zionists, there are religious Zionists, that's called Mizrahi, religious Zionists, who accepted, and they said, they bought into what the Zionists said. Yes, God is returning us to the land, it is our land, and that's the religious Zionists. Our rabbis, again, stood up and said this is unacceptable, and the majority of the religious Jews by World War II and the beginning of the state. They stood in total opposition to this Mizrahi. They considered them evil rabbis. They were knowledgeable, some of them, obviously they were learned people, but you could find a learned person to be the essence of evil. So then we looked at them as sinners, as people who were rebelling against God. That was the Zionist, religious Zionists. But then when they got control over the land, and there were people who were simply dying of hunger, and there were people, because they had control of all the economy, they had all control of actually even the charitable organizations. They got control of where all the money came in, and people were dying in the streets of Jerusalem of hunger because they didn't have where to be able to exist or to subside. And so what they made it a state, and there's some Jewish groups that said, you know what, we'll have our representation in the government, and that in that manner, God, they will be able to exist. We'll stand in opposition to Zion. Just like there is Palestinian representatives in the state, there were Jewish people, Jewish groups under their leadership, that they said that we're going to have representation in the state. Now, so when you see the picture, the portrayal of these Jewish groups, the extreme today, it's all in the news and everything. They're the heart, they're the spine of the Zionist state today. You have these groups that are extremists. These are the settlers. These are the ones of this Mizrahi who are these extremists. They don't represent the Jewish voice at all. They don't represent the majority of Jews. What they do represent is this extremist wing that was given the control under the Zionists. And they have a lot of groups that are benefiting from the Israeli deep pockets of their government, that their schools can exist. So what they do is they'll never go on the Fifth Avenue parade. You'll never see those groups or those communities celebrating Israel. They'll never do that because they know it's not that long ago that their rabbis said it's unacceptable. Now our rabbis, and it's very, you have to understand, these Zionists have a rabbinate to give it a facade of that it's something Jewish, and they have a chief rabbis. But the Jewish community that's residing in Palestine from way back when, we have our rabbinate, a totally different rabbinate, and we have our chief rabbis, we have our communities, and they never accepted the existence of the state, and we don't take any funding from that state. I think it's just worth just to take a look.
Wait a minute, that's a good segue into the next question I have. You said you don't take any funding from the state. Right. The next question I had was, does Neturei Karta, and I think I know the answer to this, but I want to hear it from you. Does Neturei Karta have any interactions with the Israeli government and or the Palestinian Authority? Do you have any interactions with either of these two governments at all?
Well, we have,
and the Palestinian Authority isn't really a government. It's an authority solely over the Palestinian people, and it's an authority that is very disappointing for me and for many others. But go ahead.
We do not even have interaction as far as giving them legitimacy, that we should ask them for permission to protest over there. And they even want us to come to them. Say, oh, just come to us and we'll give you the permission, to protest. And our rabbis refused even to do that because they said, you are a bunch of thieves. You're standing by the door. We're not going to give you that respect to recognize your sovereignty. So we have nothing to do with them. And it's very hard to explain the existence of our Jewish people who, when they have a baby, a child costs thousands of dollars. They don't take this free medical, the medicine is free there. And yet, if we refuse to sign our names under the Israeli government, so then you have to pay for each child you have, and we don't have family plan. We have, thank God, large families, so we refuse to take their medical assistance. We refuse to, and so it's extremely hard. Yet our communities continue to exist. But I would just like to show here. You can look at the pictures of demonstrations in Jerusalem. You could see tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands. It's like Times Square. They have Kikkar Shabbos in the middle of Jews demonstrating. When we took up our chief rabbis, they would constantly demonstrate and speak up, for that we're against this, against the state, against the occupation. These ones who made the state, as I was mentioning, here you can see a picture of who they are when Ben Gurion, who was the first prime minister, declared the Declaration of Independence. You see, not one of them on the dais is covering their heads, and this is a Jewish state. Imagine making a Muslim state with that. So you can see the duplicity, the difference between them and our chief rabbis and our rabbis. Here you see in the 1920s, you mentioned at the end of the 19th century, you can see this is the chief rabbi of Rabbi Sonnenfeld of West meeting with the king of Transjordan, and to declare our opposition to all the Zionist movement. This was before the state in the 1920s, 1924, 20. And then afterwards, when they made the state, when they were going to make the state in 1947, the chief rabbi, he had passed on, that chief rabbi Sonnenfeld and Rabbi Dushinsky became the chief rabbi, and he declared in front of the United Nations, 1947, a year before that they made the state. It was before it was ratified by the United Nations. He said, "We furthermore wish to express our definite opposition to a Jewish state in any part of Palestine." So this was their position. Now that because of that, we refuse to accept the state. We refuse to have any dialogue to any. So that our only dialogue is we demonstrate. Our children get arrested. Our children get beaten. You can see we have just constantly, we have thousands of pictures. You see how the police, the army, the military, they stamp them, they stampede them with horses, and they get assassinated. They get and so we demonstrate constantly. We're never militant. We don't have guns, never, and nobody. It's clear that we don't have any guns, and we stand there and demonstrate. And you can see old men, and they get assassinated, simply assassinated. Our rabbis, young children. This is ongoing. And what is our message constantly? That they have no right to be in control. So our interaction with the Zionist state is one thing. It's a stick. We get beaten with their sticks. We get arrested. Here you can see pictures of the boys and girls who turned 17 become officially criminals because we refuse to register in their army. So they try to demean them. They use psychological warfare. They put on their army uniforms forcibly on them. Here you see a girl crying behind bars, saying a prayer. She's carrying the prayer book. This is what's going on in the state constantly, in that state of Israel. Now, this is the interaction that we have with the state of Israel, that we're constantly beaten and oppressed. And they try to silence our demonstrations. They use lately, as you know, they use skunk water. They spray them with this terrible water that destroys the poor communities, and it destroys their clothes in order to discourage any further demonstrations. But this is ongoing, what we're seeing there. Now, with the Palestinians, we've from day one had interaction. We were constantly, in fact, our rabbis, when they created the Palestinian Authority with the PLO, one of our rabbis went and he became the official representative of the Jewish people in the PLO. Now, mind you, what happened was he lived in Jerusalem. The Zionists poured acid in his eyes when he was going on the streets. They blinded him in one eye. He was barely able to see from the other eye. But this is our interaction. We constantly try to have interaction with the Palestinian people, to let them understand we embrace them. They should know that we are totally in their court, that we say that they are the victims and they are the rightful owners of the land. So we try our best. The Zionist, mind you, does not let our rabbis and our people go out to the Palestinian communities. They put roadblocks that we can't demonstrate with them, but we try our best anyway. But our interaction is and again, like you say, we obviously don't agree with the political position that it should be a two-state or something, that that it should be divided, the land. We say that the whole land has to be on the Palestinian Authority, on the Palestinian people. And however the Palestinian people will like to create their state is their business. But we do not, in any shape or form, accept that there should be 1 inch of this Israeli sovereignty. So we are in interaction with every community of the Palestinians, whether it's the people in Gaza, whether it's Hamas, whether it's with Hezbollah, with all the communities that are by Lebanon. We are constantly telling them the one message:
that this is not a rightful and acceptable occupation, and we try to demonstrate with them to show that the land is theirs.
Powerful. Rabbi Weiss, I know instinctively, I know the answer to this next question, but I'm going to raise it anyway for the benefit of the viewers and listeners to this conversation. It's a two-part question. The first part is the part that I feel I already know the answer to, but I want the audience to be able to hear it from you. Given the fact that you are your community, those who believe like you, those who stand on the Torah, as you and your community members do, and speak out against the existence of this apartheid state, given the fact that you are as abused as the members of your community are, why are you in occupied Palestine? Why have you felt it to be necessary to be there, to have a presence in that occupied land? That's the first part of the question. The second part of the question, does Neturei Karta ever have closed door dialogues with Western governments, the US, the UK, France, Germany, etc., regarding their abhorrent Middle East policies that basically supports, defends, and rewards Zionist aggression? Two-part question.
Right. With the help of the Almighty. Firstly, when the Zionist state was ratified by the United Nations, and that message that I had spoken, that the rabbis spoke out against the state, is in the United Nations documents, actually, that they said, Rabbi Dushinsky said, we furthermore wish to express our definite opposition to a Zionist state, to a Jewish state in any part of Palestine. In other words, what they were trying to further themselves at that time is a Jewish state. So they said, we're totally opposed to this. Now, what we did, our communities gathered together and tried to establish, a front, a possibility of existence, which was extremely hard, because I was saying they put a stranglehold on the Jewish communities, the Zionist state, and people were dying of hunger. So even one of the chief rabbis established a thing called Keren Hatzalah. That means to save Jews. And that was an established charity fund around the world for people who do not take any money from the state of Israel. And that's a multi-million dollar funding charity fund that was created by the chief rabbi of Palestine. That chief rabbi of Palestine was after this Rabbi Dushinsky. It's hard to remember, though, the one who was in 1947, who I mentioned, who said, to the United Nations documents that we don't want to stay. After he passed on, there was Rabbi Teitelbaum. Rabbi Teitelbaum himself, of blessed memory, went and as a chief rabbi of Palestine, went and moved to New York and established a very, very large community here, which is then the hundreds of thousands of people, of followers around the world. He has schools and everything, and he urged constantly people that they should leave. They shouldn't be under this criminal state of Israel. So he urged people to leave, but it was extremely hard, as you well know, I'm sure, because you are constantly doing for humanity, as I know, and for people who are being oppressed. Your name you're so well known. I'm so proud of being with you on the show, by the way. So he urged people to leave, but a Jewish person has to have a center with, they have Torah, where they have schools, they have kosher food and everything. They can't just move to some place in the middle of the universe. When Jews were trying to move out to the United States, to the UK, to Canada, to different places, and wherever they try to move, it is extremely hard to get visas, to get permission to settle. And every person who moved out is a fight in and of itself, to a struggle to be able to get permission to live in that area. So we have tens and tens of thousands of Jews who did leave Israel because we didn't want to be under the occupation. And Rabbi Teitelbaum, the chief rabbi of Palestine, Rabbi Joel Teitelbaum, blessed memory, he kept on saying, how to be under this state, you don't know how you're giving them support and everything. He urged always to people to move away. That said,
there are many people, as I say, who was it just, it was very hard. They couldn't move out. So their existence is living there in a war, in a fight against this Zionist occupation. Now, there also was some rabbis who said that they held differently than Rabbi Teitelbaum. They said that, if we're going to leave, we're going to capitulate to the Zionists. We're going to give them control. We dare not let them take over the name Judaism, and they're going to tell the world that this is proper. We have to be here and fight from within. So there were some rabbis who held that position also. So the many, as I say, but the demonstrations go on. The interesting thing, and it must be puzzling for the viewers here, that how come you're constantly seeing the settlers, you're hearing about every day in the news about the extreme right, who are the backbone of the state of Israel, yet you don't hear about all these thousands and tens of thousands of people demonstrating in the streets of Jerusalem. You don't hear this, and this is daily. And I say, if this once anything like this would happen in any country in the world, if this would happen here in the United States, then it would be or if it happened in Iran, oh boy, if this would happen, they would do this to Jews in Iran, God forbid, and if something like that once would happen, the way they attack Jews ruthlessly in the Zionists attack them in Jerusalem or around the other parts of the occupied territory, if this would happen, the Zionist prime minister would be already on the plane, running over and calling for restitution and compensation that should be paid directly into their pockets, and declaring everybody anti-Semitic. The ADL would be there declaring everybody as anti-Semitic. And now, of course, God forbid that we should hear such a thing should happen in any part of the world, the oppression of Jews. But thank God we don't hear this. And if it would happen, as I say, everybody would be talking about it. And everybody would remember it. Yet this is happening daily in the state of Israel, and nobody speaks up against this crime. Because why? Because the Zionists are so successful in their portrayal that they're a Jewish state, and they're protecting the Jews, and they have an in the media, in the major media. They pay for the most expensive PR firms, public relations firms, and they have media watch, and they have people who, if somebody goes out and makes a program or some sympathetic for Palestine or speaks about the Jewish opposition, they'll flood them with letters and threaten that they're going to reach their advertisers, that they shouldn't advertise with them, and they put the intimidation is beyond words. They have AIPAC. They have that stands over the politicians in the United States. So that would take us into the segue into what you're asking about our meeting with politicians. I could tell you through my years, thank God, I met with many politicians in different parts of the world, privately, spoken to them, and everybody. I can't say everybody, I won't say everybody, but many politicians understand, they comprehend, and they hear what's going on. But they know that if they're going to open their mouths, they're going to say one word against the state of Israel, they're going to be committing what is called political suicide. And as you know, there's a Congressman Finley wrote a book about this, that he was
I dare call it conspiracy.
Yeah, he was like 5 times, I think, in the company. He was in his office five. He won 5 times, and then.
I'm sorry, I got my wires crossed. He wasn't. It wasn't. What was the title of his book? You remember?
Dare to Speak Out. Dare to Speak Out.
Dare to Speak Out. Yes,
right.
Yes. Dare to Speak Out.
He put out also other books, but anyway, so and he spoke about that.
That's the one that got him in trouble.
Yeah, and he's not the only one. We all of us know many other who dares to speak out a word. What happened was he had been 5 times incumbent. He was and he had won, and beautiful with a wide margin. And then he spoke up for Palestine. I figured it must be that he felt he was comfortable enough in his seat that he could speak up already, and he spoke out. And so what did the Zionists do? They put up a nobody name against him. And they just got him thrown out of office. It's unbelievable. And that's what they did with plenty of people. They right away brutally attacked people of being anti-Semitic. I'm sure you must have been labeled an anti-Semite at least once in your life. So
many times, my friend. But that brings me to another question, Rabbi Weiss. And this is internal. It's closer to me. And I I've been wondering about this question for some time. You and I, we've known each other for years. And is Neturei Karta, and I believe I already know the answer to this question as well. But are you ever invited to the table for the interfaith dialogues by large, well-established Muslim communities?
Oh, well,
Muslim organizations.
Yes. Well, it's not a straight answer, yes or no, because there's a lot of times that we are invited, but we insist on being, upfront that we're going to say what we are, that we are against the existence of the state. So we're not politically correct. We are correct, but not politically correct. So, and a lot of times we've had, I'm not going to get into, saying names of very people who are willing, really are attempting to do good. And so they were sometimes forced by when people found out that we were invited to these tremendously large conferences, they were forced to drop the invitation, or because of this position that we take when they didn't realize what they're doing, when they invited us. So we have now, there are others who are, let's say, in Iran or other countries that are other places, or very serious organizations who do understand what the truth is. And interfaith means that that none of us are to make any compromises in our religion. Interfaith means that we can coexist, as like Jews did for a thousand years with the Muslim communities. Here we have a picture. I always carry different pictures of. You see how Jews and Muslims live together in Palestine, and as we did in all the other countries, we always had this distinctly different religion. We serve God differently, but that was never an impediment to peace. That is part of this terrible Nakba, because the Zionists, they want to portray this as a religious conflict. That's their ploy, their modus operandi, that it's a religious conflict between Jews and Muslims. If you oppose Zionism, you're an anti-Semite. But there could be nothing further from the truth. When before the state, we were living together with a distinctly different religion, and more than that, for this 1,000 years, we went through so much trials and tribulations, suffering, the Crusades, Inquisition, and it was the Muslim countries, the Muslim people who embraced us and took us in, even though we were distinctly different in our religion, and we flourished. We put out our greatest rabbis. What changed? That now there's this problem, the advent of Zionism, this nationalism. But they have the audacity, the hubris, the chutzpah, they say in Judaism, to say that they're Jewish and that the ones who oppose them are anti-Semitic and anti-Jewish. This could be nothing, more further from the truth in this, in this issue. So there's interfaith. And there's interfaith. The interfaith, that means that we should be able to coexist. Yes, we go many, many times with interfaith groups, and when they're clear and they're serious and they want to have this truth of interfaith, of coexistence, and not politically correct. But the vast majority, unfortunately, that the world sees, and these great interfaith, meaning that it's politically correct and that we can coexist even if there's a state, we're never there.
Mm-hmm. Rabbi Weiss, I knew that this time was going to go fast, and it has. We just have, just very few short minutes left. I have a question that I wasn't planning originally when we set this program to bring to your attention and ask you about, but it's one that is important. I'm going to ask you to just, give a very brief 1-minute response to it. I received a message from a concerned citizen out of Massachusetts a week or two ago. And that message reads as follows: I would like some help on how to anonymously report a rabbi who has been promoting hate speech against Muslims in my community for years. This has started to affect my community as the person continues to this day to post hateful videos and statements on Islam. I wish to remain anonymous to protect my family's safety as we live in the same area as this rabbi, and he has been making threats. Now, I was sent some screenshots of some of his social media, and yes, they are vicious. They are hate-filled. There's a lot of hate-filled venom. And are you familiar with this this individual by the name of Rabbi Henry Morse? Out of he identifies as a Messianic Jew, a Messianic rabbi, I should say, out of Stoughton. I believe that's probably one of the suburbs of Boston.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's an oxymoron. He's a Messianic. Just already, there's no such concept. Judaism is the covenant we made with God. Anything that is not orthodox, that's not religious, that we accept every word of God, is not only it's not Jewish, it's a crime. It's a rebellion against God. So these are, and when you send Henry, I right away, he didn't even go by his Jewish name, if he has, but when I don't know. So it's, you can just right away see that it's not. It's just not. He's well. Just put it flatly. He's a fraud. But as the whole movement is fraud. But when anything that is not that accepting the laws of God as it was given to us, is not acceptable. And we've been fighting, mind you, Judaism, Orthodox Judaism, the ones who were today against Zionism. We had a fight before then, like 200-300 years ago. There was the beginning of Reform Judaism, to change Judaism, to reform it. Now that's, again, like I say, it's oxymoron. It's just not acceptable. We made a covenant to accept all the laws of the Torah. So when that movement started, our rabbis fought tooth and nail. That was before Zionism. Zionism was already the product of these people who left the Torah. So we don't accept them. They're not acceptable Jews. What they're saying is obviously unacceptable, repugnant. What they're attacking the Muslims. We would gladly stand up and make a statement against them, and I'm fully, but not as a rabbi, because he's not a rabbi. He's the community is unacceptable. They don't represent Judaism. It's a false representation of Judaism, just to intimidate and to disqualify the people who are in opposition to them, and to give them legitimacy, and to say that they are right in oppressing in their war with the Islamic people, and the ones who are standing up in opposition to the state, they're saying is anti-Semitic. So what this guy is not only, he's not a person in the position to stand and talk about what's right and what's wrong, but he's the criminal who's yelling at the one who he just stole from. He's saying, thief, thief, thief. He just ran out of the house with the guy's jewelry, and he's yelling and he's pointing it down back at the house, and he's saying to everybody, thief, the thief, the thief. That's what it means when this guy's talking about that Islamic community.
I hate to have to limit you, my friend. I mean, this has been a wonderful dialogue. I wish we had a lot more time for it. But in 1 minute, do you have a final thought you would like to share on today's topic?
Well, with the help of the Almighty, we want to express to the Palestinian people first that our hearts cry, and we are frustrated, humiliated, and we hurt with their suffering. And our rabbis who are living in Palestine, constantly, I met them through the years. They lived through the occupation, and they would cry. They would talk about what happened to the Palestinians beyond words, especially that the Muslims and Arab people, including in Palestine and throughout the Muslim world, were our hosts and really embraced us and gave us a home. How dare this happen? How dare the Zionists vilify them and do what they're doing to them, and call them the villains. So we want the world to know that they should be careful. Do not refer to this as a Jewish state, like the Zionists constantly insist on calling that. It's Zionism, and it's Judaism and Zionism is diametric opposites. Even if nobody would be following the Torah, would follow Judaism, and all the world of Jews, God forbid, would become Zionists, it wouldn't change the fact, like my Rabbi Beck used to, bless memory, used to say, 1 and 1 is 2. If the whole world would say 1 and 1 is 3, so the world should know Zionism is not Judaism. And the fact is, thank God, if they can get beyond the media control, that you would find that the very religious, including in occupied Palestine, is anti-Zionist. And although what you're seeing is the media with the right-wing extremists and all these things, this is what's in the media. So we want them to know and we urge everybody to pray to God, because ultimately it's in God's hand. God is the ruler of the world, and we don't know why he lets injustice. It's a whole long program for itself, but we do know that it says, "Why are you rebelling against me?" God says it will not be successful. The state of Israel will end. So we are urging everybody to pray for a speedy and peaceful removal of the impediment to peace, the state of Israel, and God should help. That and not forget to speak up for the Palestinians. Do for the Palestinian people. Don't be quiet. You are not anti-Semitic. Let us all do together and pray, and God should help. They should bring a speedy and free Palestine sooner nowadays, inshallah.
Thank you, Rabbi Weiss. I want to thank you for joining us today. May God bless you, your family, and your community, my friend.
Thank you. God bless you. And then we're always looking forward to your great work, what you're doing constantly. God give you long and healthy years.
Thank you. May Allah accept. Now, Brother Ponte, Brother Sadiq, what I'd like to do is end the broadcast. I've got a statement to make at the end, but we want to show the short video of our brother, one of our brother Sharif, providing some background information on Al-Quds. We had a couple of other, we had I think maybe two videos that we wanted to show, but we don't have time for them. We just want to show the one of Brother Sharif. He's a Palestinian American brother, good man, and he's giving us some background on the compound, the Al-Aqsa compound. We want to show that, and then I'm going to close out with some very important information.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, respected listeners and believers. I'm here in the holy city of Jerusalem, Al-Quds, at the Haram al-Sharif, the Masjid al-Aqsa compound. Behind me is the Dome of the Rock, or in Arabic, the Masjid al-Sakhra, the Masjid of the Rock. And in front of me to the south is the Masjid al-Qibli, which is the area from which the Prophet, peace be upon him, led the Anbiya, the prophets, in prayer. And this entire area, the entire surroundings, the Masjid al-Qibli, the Masjid al-Sakhra, and all of the open corridors comprise the Masjid al-Aqsa. And this is a very important point, because the Zionists are actually attempting to take control of areas that are outside of the actual buildings in order to essentially mark their presence and then eventually take it step by step. So it's important for Muslims all over the world to understand that the entirety of the noble sanctuary is the Masjid al-Aqsa, not only the Masjid al-Qibli and not only the Masjid al-Sakhra that is behind me, but the entirety of the surroundings. So remember that, respected believers, because of the attempts of the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take control of the entirety of the area, and that, of course, will only happen over our dead bodies. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
I want to thank my dear brother Sharif. May Allah Ta'ala bless him. May Allah Ta'ala safeguard him in his journeys and in his work. Our brother is a lawyer by profession, and but most importantly, he's just a very good, solid brother. My closing thoughts. A young 14-year-old black boy by the name of Emmett Till was brutally murdered in Money, Mississippi on August 28, 1955. Had he lived, he would have turned 82 5 days ago on July 25th. Emmett was savagely beaten, tortured, and shot. His broken body was then thrown into the El-Hajj River. His crime? Allegedly whistling at a white woman in the Jim Crow South. He was visiting his cousins he was from Chicago originally. He was visiting his cousins in Mississippi, and he allegedly violated the code, the culture. The two men who were charged with his murder were found not guilty by an all-white jury, despite all of the evidence that pointed to their guilt. This was common practice. Back in the day, it was called jury nullification. And we still see elements of that today. When the grotesque body of her son was returned to her for the funeral, a grieving mother, Mamie Till Mobley, would insist on an open casket during the funeral, so the world could see what those two-legged animals did to her baby. This act of defiant, emotional courage ended up being a major catalyst for the African-American human rights struggle in the U.S., commonly referred to as the quote-unquote civil rights struggle. But our struggle has always been more than civil rights. Speaking this past week at the proclamation signing ceremony for the new 3-part national monument honoring the memory of Emmett Till and his mother, Mamie Till Mobley, President Biden said the following, and I quote, "At a time when there are those who seek to ban books, bury history, we're making it clear, crystal clear, how darkness and denialism can hide much, but they erase nothing. We can't we can't just choose to learn what we know. We have to learn what we should know," end quote. Now, this was from President Biden. It was a well-said observation, and I agree with him. I agree, Mr. President. But as a black man born and raised in America, while I agree with this argument 100%, it is with the following caveat. The same rule, the same principle applies for our long-suffering Palestinian brothers and sisters and America's shameful support of apartheid Zionist Israel. Our nation's contradictions and hypocrisies must come to an end. Now, thank you for joining us today. Dear audience, if you feel this broadcast has value, please share it far and wide. I close as we normally do with the Surah Al-Asr. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal Asr. Innal insana lafi kusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amalu salihati. Wa tawasaw bil haqq. Wa tawasaw bis sabr. Which means, in the translation of the meaning, in the name of God, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, by the token of time through the ages, surely humanity is in loss, except those who believe and do good, and exhort one another to truth, and exhort one another to patiently persevere. On that note, peace be unto you. Assalamu alaikum.